Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Stories Written by a Current Prisoner. Today's story is completely different. It is completely different from what you're used to. And it is my great honor to be able to have this woman as my guest and have her share her story. Unfortunately, yes, she did lose her son on Christmas Day inside of the California prison system in a vicious manner. In a vicious manner. As we know, ladies and gentlemen, 20-something people have literally lost their lives the same way last year, 2022. We already started this new year, and there's already another one on the list, and it's very sad. It's very sad because it's usually amongst their own people targeting their own people. So it is very real. If there's anybody out there that would also be interested in sharing their story and utilizing this platform for exposure, or to just to share their son's story, their brother's story, their father's story, feel more than free to contact me at Mr. Tony Journalist at gmail.com. Mr. Tony Journalist at gmail.com. It would be my pleasure to have you on the show. With that being said, there is a GoFundMe that has been created by this woman. Please help her out. Anything will help. As you can only imagine what kind of emotional and psychological roller coaster that this woman has been through. So thank you guys for your support. Let's go ahead and waste no time and dive right into it. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Stories Written by a Current Prisoner. We always hear the inmate story. We always hear, the other side, man. But this time we're going to do things just a little bit different. And unfortunately, this is a victim's perspective. Would you please go ahead and introduce yourselves and tell the audience why you guys are here?
My name is Shanna and I'm here to talk about my son, Braden, who was murdered in prison at California State Prison, Sacramento. He was serving time there, and he was murdered in his cell on December 25th, 2020, which is Christmas Day and also my birthday. And we are fighting for justice for my son, and we're praying that 2023 will be the year that we get that justice. Tiffany, it's all you.
And I'm Tiffany Napoli. I'm Shanna's friend. Braden was like a little brother to me and also cellmate to my husband for almost 3 years. And I helped Shanna with running the Justice for Brave Facebook page, our GoFundMe, and all of the media stuff behind the scenes.
I want to thank both of you guys so much for taking the time out of your day and doing these interviews. I can only imagine the emotional and psychological pain that both of you guys have endured throughout this process, but continue to keep pushing and stay strong.
Thank you.
We're trying.
So before we dive into the specifics of exactly what it is that happened, obviously he's a lot more than that. So would you be able to tell me who he was as a person growing up, and how did he end up catching this case, and how did that make you feel, him first going to prison?
Well, Braden was a light when he a lot of people have described him as he lived
Goofy.
out loud, and he from the moment he came into this world, he wanted to live. He wanted to experience life in every way, and he started baseball. He picked up a ball and a bat at 4 years old, and he was knocking home runs out of the field at 4 years old. And he became he became a star athlete, early on. And so he played 9-10 years of travel ball and baseball, Little League baseball, and he became one of the star players and amazing addition to every team, and the coaches loved him, and we were just and then he went on to football, and then he found his passion, and football became his life and his brotherhood, and he lived it, breathed it, ate it, slept it. It was everything. And he was brilliant, but he struggled with a lot of people, ADHD, and he struggled with he was very, very, very social, and but He had coaches that really loved him because he was so dedicated. He was the early bird. He was the first one on the field. He was the leader. He was the captain. But that minimum for school that kept him going, and the coaches and the accountability kept him going. And I was always involved. And well, as we neared the end of high school, Braden started getting in with some people just wanted to take him down, and he became vulnerable. Classic dad, just in New York, not really wanting to spend time with him, and it was confusing for him. Single mom, but that's not an excuse. His grandma and I spent every waking moment with him. He had wonderful coaches around him. He never made excuses for that. He just wanted to be around with his dad, but never got it. It hurt him. So he just, when football started to end, little did I know that he was spending more and more time with the wrong type of people, and bloodsuckers, as I like to call them, because So my son spiraled into drug addiction. It started small, and it consumed him. I didn't know that my son was dealing drugs. My son was a high-functioning addict. In many ways the worst kind, because he still maintained his sports, he maintained friendships, he maintained very respectful relationships with his mother and his grandmother, his grandmother. He was destroying himself from the inside out. So petty theft, crime started. It went downhill when football ended. So we started with, our home was raided right before high school ended. So long story short, I had to get him quickly into adult school so he could graduate on time. He did. He graduated high school diploma from rehab. He went to rehab before he got out of high school, and they kicked him out. He got out of rehab because he could meditate, he could calm them, and he was out in 21 days. Well, he had a habit. So this is part of what I want to fight for. Our mental health system, we don't take care of the addicted in our country. We treat them and treat them. And my son was able to calm the system. He didn't want to be able to calm the system. We went through countless rehabs. We went through overdoses. We went through so many things, and he still maintained jobs. He became a stepfather to an autistic child, and he adored that child. He became a line cook. He was our mechanic on food trucks. He was incredible. He worked. He earned his own truck, but he was also committing crimes, and he was doing horrendous things to his body. And ultimately, finally, he knew the only way he was going to get clean was to get himself arrested and go to prison. So he made the choice to go to prison, and he did, but he didn't hurt anybody. He made sure it was bad enough that he would get to Folsom. Well, he made sure that he got, he basically signed a death sentence for himself. He got 11 years at Folsom prison. And then he got in with people that, so he took charges for people over there so that he'd get protection. So he took holding charges so that he could get over to the other side, to New Folsom, so he could prove his loyalty. And that loyalty got him ultimately killed. And I want to find out how and why, because he got clean in there. He found he was helping people. He was working with COVID patients. He was testing clean. And he trusted his cellie, and his cellie stabbed him to death on Christmas Day. So I want answers, and I want to find out, and I want to help people, and I want to continue his work. He wanted to help youth. He wanted to help people stay out of the system. And Tiffany and I want to work hard to help people in the system. Like, we want to fix the system as much as any person can. It starts with you. It starts with us. So that's my son's story. He was more than a criminal. He owned his mistakes, but he didn't deserve to die in there.
May I ask, what was that initial phone call like, and how did that day play out? And what exactly did they tell you?
Well, my son called me every day, and we were extremely close. And 2020 was a nightmare for us because I saw him every weekend. And when visitation was taken from us, the last time I physically saw my son in person was in March of 2020. And that was a hard hit for us. And so when we were so excited because we were going to have video visits finally. And so when we had a video visit scheduled for the day after Christmas, and we were so excited. And so he called me Christmas morning to wish me happy birthday and to, Merry Christmas, happy birthday. And he said, Mom, I've got bad news. They have to cancel video visits because someone in our unit contracted COVID. And I'm pissed because we're going on a 2-week lockdown, which means I can't have my job working with COVID patients. And it means that we don't have our video visit. And I said, oh man, I'm so sorry, bud. And it really depressed him. And he goes, I don't know who has it in here, but it freaked him out because he was scared about his grandma who was high risk. He hated that I was working my side job at Target. He was really panicked about COVID. He was panicked about him getting it. He told me he was freaked out because a lot of employees in there were not taking care of themselves. They weren't wearing masks, that the inmates weren't wearing masks, and they were really taking care of themselves, and he was just really worried about it. And he said, I don't know which inmate has it. Well, I said, well, okay, well, what are you going to do today, bud? And he said, my cellie and I made this really big batch of whiskey, and we're selling it to a batch to one of the guards. I don't know which guard he was selling it to. And he said, and then my cellie and I are just going to hang out and watch TV and make some food, and I'll call you later tonight, though, Ma. And I said, okay, baby. And that was at about 10:30 in the morning. And my son was pronounced dead at 1:30 in the afternoon. I didn't get a call. I got a call from the coroner's office, from the investigator at the coroner's office at 6:30 p.m. Because they said that the prison had tried to contact me, and they said they didn't have a current number on file, which is very odd to me because no one's more involved than I am in my son's life and keeping current records. And there's a lot of strangeness. There's a lot of missing property. There's a lot of oddities that have gone on in my son's case. The DA's office didn't even get the case for about 2 months after he died. So, yeah.
And we're not talking just a couple missing things. We're talking his murderer's things with his name on them in the box that came. The only things that did come back were covered in blood. His jewelry is missing. His watch is missing. All of his clothes are missing. His photo albums, not one of the dozen he had, came home. I said just no letters, no mail, nothing of importance came home with him, with his belongings.
Was there any type of contact with the authorities? No, what were you going to say? I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead. Please ask your question.
Was there any type of contact with any type of authorities, any type of investigators, detectives within the prison system that contacted you and provided you any type of information regarding your son's incident? Yes.
So what happened was, so when I got the call, so Christmas that evening, once my son was incarcerated, it's really hard for me to celebrate my birthday anyways and just to go out and do anything. So it was hard for my boyfriend to get me to go out anyways, but I did it, and my son pushed me to do it and said, Mom, just go out. And so we went out to some friends that live in a rural area just outside of Woodland. And so when we started receiving the call, both of us were receiving these calls on our phone that were blocked numbers. And anytime not my first rodeo, when I was seeing blocked numbers come up, I looked down at the phone, and both of us kind of, were taken aback. And then he listened to the voicemail, and he said, you need to they're calling about Braden. So I listened to the voicemail, and I ran out to the front and listened to the voicemail and called immediately, and it went from there. I don't remember much after that, but so that was the coroner's office calling me. So I hadn't gotten a call from the prison I didn't get a call from the prison until the next day. So I get a call from the investigator at the prison and at that point he calls me maybe mid-morning on the 26th and says, I'm so sorry that I wasn't able to get a hold of you earlier in the day on the 25th, but we seem to have not had a current contact phone number for you, which, again, I say seems very impossible to me because anyways, that doesn't seem right to me. And so he said that he gave me information that, that they were doing an investigation, that Mr. Greendahl was the only suspect, that he had been, that he was sitting on his bed when they got to the cell, very cryptic about timing, that they got into the cell and that they, emergency services were called and that they had performed, it was very, very cryptic. The only information, honestly, that I received that was more detailed was from inmates that had written to me and from, and I really can't say, to protect innocent people that really put their neck out, who happened to be part of the team that worked on my son. That gave me information to give me some peace. That somebody I happen to know, ironically, gave me information. I didn't get any information from the prison staff. And it's very disturbing that I had to get information about the details of how long they worked on my son and like when he actually died from inside sources. Otherwise, I knew nothing. So I just know that he was pronounced dead at 1:35 in the afternoon. So when he was killed, when he was attacked, I don't know anything.
Is there? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. No, please go ahead. Go ahead.
It's through your resources and through your contacts, by chance, do you have maybe an idea of as to why? Because the gentleman, obviously the perpetrator, I looked into his case and he was initially only sentenced to, I think, 8 years. It was.
Mhm.
So,
8 years for arson.
Exactly. So it just strikes me as why he would do something like this.
Well, it's very strange to me, and I'll tell you something. My son did not trust easily, but when he did trust, he would literally do anything for you. And sometimes to my absolute beyond frustration, and he was so loyal to people that I had no idea what Jordan Greendahl was serving time for if I'd just gone by what my son, like by what my son told me. I would have to look up charges for people. Like when I knew my son got a new cellmate, I would have to like do my super sleuthing, and it was just out of curiosity because he would say it's not my story to tell. He's doing his time, he's whatever. Well, I had asked, oh, okay, because he would tell me I got a new cellie, and like he's from, North Highlands. Like I think he's gonna be cool. Like, he's good people. And oh, okay, what's he doing? What's he serving time for? He's like, Mom, come on, like that's not cool. That's not my story to tell. And that's how my son was. And this person is, and I said this when I did an interview initially with Chris Thomas right after my son died, which I was in a fog, but my son asked me at the end of November Mom, can you please purchase this book for him? He really wants this book, and it's for his birthday. I purchased a book for this guy and had it sent to the prison for his birthday. My son asked to reduce his hygiene and asked if he could put some of the money toward, and my son was extremely conscientious about his own hygiene stuff. He asked if I would, like I can't even tell you how much. And he asked if I could put some of the money toward, could he put in an order for Greendale? Could he put in some of his stuff to help him out? Because he didn't have anybody helping him out, and he was short on like getting his hygiene. And I was like, all right, if you're comfortable with that, kid, that's you. I'm not going to do extra for you. Like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, Mom. I have lists upon lists of times where he helped Jordan out, like covering him on stuff. And so this guy, like, I have this guy talked to me on the phone at one point and thanked me for, like, your kid is like such a great guy. Like, he's such a great friend, and like, thank you so much. Like, he speaks so highly of you. It gives me the creeps because I don't know if he was just fake the whole time or if he was put in a compromising position and told, you have no choice or you're going to die. You're going to do this. So I don't know.
However, the information that we have gotten from the people we know is that this was not an authorized hit. This was not an organized hit. This was not anything that he owed anybody for, that he had done anything wrong.
Yeah, he had no
out of
debt.
nowhere.
He had no beef, from what I'm told, that he had no, and even the DA's office said initially what they could tell me is their initial interviews with some of the inmates that they spoke extremely highly of him. Staff, others, that he was well liked. He was helpful. He was, the letters that I've gotten, multiple inmates wrote to me, and via letters and via messages, and these were inmates of a different color, and I hate to say it that way, but that's, prison life, that saying, please don't, they're going to drag his name and drag him through the mud in the trial. Please know that your son was so good to me. He was my best friend. He didn't care about color. And he's the one that told me that I had a wonderful voice to keep rapping. And this is, this is why I can't drag them into this, because the defense attorney can drag them in, and I don't do that to them. My son would be mortified. I can't put them in danger. And they reached out and put themselves out there and trusted me enough to say, go after administration. They covered this up. So, and I don't want to say too much because it scares me. I don't want to ruin my son's trial, but I am so disgusted that my son may have been left laying there on the floor dying because I'm told that he was laying there for too long as they're screaming man down. I don't know how long, but long enough. So, I don't know. That's all I know. It's enough to know.
And Tony, this is a level 4 facility where COs are supposed to be walking every 5 to 10 minutes. And from what we know, it was quite a big difference between that and when the COs actually came and walked into his cell.
Well, and Tiffany, and I'll tell you something, Tony. This is okay. I'll tell you something. My son has had he had an insane. This is the other thing I want people to know about my son. His sense of humor was insane, and this is the story that I want people to know. Like, this is one of the things he said to me one day. This was like after, like around Thanksgiving, when he called me, and he's talking to me on the phone one morning, and I'm talking to him, and I said, I was trying to tell him something important, and I said, son, and he's calling me, and I know where these phones are at, and people are waiting for phones, and he's talking to me, and he kept gobbling in my ear. And I said, son, please stop. I'm trying to tell you something. This is my 25-year-old son, level 4 prison. People are waiting. COs are walking by, and he's gobbling at me. And I said, son, knock it off. I'm trying to finish a story to you. And he just kept doing it. He goes, I sound good, though, don't I? I sound just like a turkey. And I said, son, yeah, you do. And then he goes, I bet you wish you could see what I'm doing right now. And I said, what? He goes, I'm strutting. And I said, son, you're not strutting. He goes, yeah, I'm strutting. Turkeys strut. And I said, okay, great. That's great, son. And then he's like, what, CO? You've never seen a turkey strutting? And I hear the CO. He's like, shut up, lesseos. And he's like, I'm strutting like a turkey. And I'm not joking with you. We have been plagued by turkeys by our house. They come by and they strut by our house now. And I like to believe that it's my son torturing me and strutting. But that's my son's sense of humor. And he had that relationship where I hear the CO laughing in the background. And every time I talk to him, every 5 minutes, I would hear him yell in the phone, walking, because they're walking the plank, and he's yelling out of respect, letting everyone know that their COs are walking. So you're telling me that 5 minutes, and that my son could have been saved because the COs were walking the planks 5 minutes, and he died laying on the floor? Nobody came for him? All of a sudden, they're not walking the planks every 5 minutes? There's something wrong. So that's why I have questions.
And there was only that one phone call? Like, that's it? There wasn't any follow-up calls or anything in the next following weeks or months with any more additional information?
No. No, sir.
Not from the prison.
That's it. Just boom.
Nope. Not from the prison. And I had to call and call and call to try to get his property. And once the prosecutor and the Sacramento DA's office got my son's case, they have been amazing. I'll tell you that. They have been bird dogging this case, and they have been calling. They had to relentlessly call and email to get them to release my son's property to me. And then when they finally release it, then I open that box, and there's a bag of my son's bloody tennis shoes. And that's the thing that's on top. And then Green Doll's hats with blood on them. That sent me into a tailspin. And I don't get that till October following my son's murder. That's how long it took them to get me the things that were not in custody.
It was almost
what I'm
10
dealing
months.
with. And I'm not exaggerating. 10
yeah,
months.
and Tony, we're not talking a couple little spots of blood. There are 3 pairs of his shoes, and they are soaked in his blood. One of his pairs of shoes even has some of his hair on it.
That's what I opened up to.
Yeah, this is what they gave to his mother.
So I want some justice from my boy. He deserves better than this. And I'm so happy that you are giving a voice to him, because he deserves that. Some of these guys are in there, they're just thrown in with the worst of the worst. They deserve a voice. And it's not
just him, Tony. You've covered several murders in California prisons. I
That's what I'm
believe we're
talking
at
about.
almost 25 since Braden was murdered. And that's just in California.
These men deserve coverage. Yeah, these men deserve coverage. It's not just my son. These men deserve coverage. It's not okay. We're just throwing these men away into this this dungeon, and it's not okay. So
Braden was sentenced to 11 years, and he was 25 years old and didn't come home.
He didn't come home, and he was put in with murderers, and he was put in with he shot at a house. He shot a gun into the air. He had stolen. Was in, one of his cellmates was in there for first-degree murder. And Tiffany and I were reading that last night, and I'm thinking to myself, you throw a 25-year-old man in there with such promise and who needed help with his addiction and was getting it for himself, you threw him in there and threw away the key, and you don't think I'm going to fight for something? Like, you don't think I'm going to fight for other young men that you're doing this to? Like, you're kidding me. So,
and Tony, one of his cellmates, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. One of his cellmates.
No, go ahead. No, absolutely. Go ahead.
One of his cellmates that was in there for murder committed one of these other murders in California in the last 2 years.
Right. Oh, right.
Yeah.
That's right, Tiffany. I totally forgot. You're right. He's in there for first-degree murder, but then he killed another inmate just recently. And he's one that I have a letter from him, a beautifully written letter, beautiful penmanship, telling me what an amazing mother I am and what a wonderful son I have. And I'm thinking to myself, you were in a tiny little cell with my child. It's just, you're throwing these men in there with these monsters, and you're expecting them to come out and lead lives like these, successful lives, or come out at all. And we're not setting people up for success at all. And it has to start turning around somehow. So that's what it is. I'm not just fighting for my own boy. I'm fighting for the ones that are still alive.
Yeah, my husband was sentenced to 35 years for second-degree burglary. No violence. Has never hurt anybody in his life.
Yeah.
And he is serving a 35-year sentence for second-degree burglary. When COVID hit, they started letting out violent offenders, murderers, lifers. And my husband is still sitting there a decade later.
We want to help promote change, and someone like you is just the person that's just, you're doing such an amazing thing. So thank you.
No, absolutely. The pleasure. I'm sorry. Go ahead. The pleasure's all mine. By the way.
No, you're giving us a voice, and I can't thank you enough.
Yeah, it's been hard to get the coverage that we want for Braden because he was incarcerated.
Yeah.
People think that if you're in prison, you're just the worst of the worst. You're a horrible person. Braden wasn't like that. Braden was a mama's boy.
Yeah, he was.
And proud of it. And he'd tell everybody. He loved his mom and his grandmother more than anything in the world. He made everybody laugh every single day. He was just truly
a big dork.
He was a big dork. He was goofy, but he was truly just a phenomenal person who had an addiction, and in order to get help with his addiction, put himself into prison, because our system for addicts and mental health is so beyond messed up that you can't get help.
No.
And now he doesn't get to come home.
Yesterday I reported on this unfortunate incident that happened at Kern Valley, and I can only imagine that a family right now is grieving so hard. Can you tell me what that experience was like for you, and the next following days and the next following weeks, how did that affect you emotionally and mentally?
I'll tell you, it's crazy when I look back at myself in that first week. I don't recognize myself because I used to look at people that had suffered the loss of a child, and I would say to myself, how do they even talk? How do they breathe? How are they putting one foot in front of the other? And the truth is that you just do, because you have to honor your child. And I just there's no other choice for me but to live for my child, because he was so amazing. And I surround myself. I'm sitting in my car right now in front of my garage, and I have literally just pictures of him all around my dashboard and everywhere. And I just made the decision that I would talk about him every single day. And it's the first oh gosh, I don't know, probably the first 6 months are a blur. And I started just getting help and started talking. I just think I had to talk about him. And I don't think anybody can get through this kind of pain and loss without talking to professionals. You just can't. And having a tight support network of friends. Like, if I didn't have Tiffany, oh my God, she stepped in and just took charge. And if you don't have a person that can do that for you right away, you're going to be lost. And whether you have to identify them, or you just have to have that support group. Not everybody's going to start a Justice for Bray or a Justice, not everybody, it's not every death is like that, but that's given me purpose. And ultimately, until my son's case is completely adjudicated, we have a goal, until Tiffany's husband is released and my son's murder trial case is completely resolved, then we're going to start planning an amazing celebration of life. And then I'll truly feel like I'm ready to plan a celebration of life where I can smile and we can laugh and we can really have fun. And it's going to be a while, but I don't know. It's time. And it just takes time. It's some days are really hard, some days are excruciating, and some days I don't think about anything at all. I just get through the day like a robot, and then some days I feel everything, and then some days I'm okay. I can get through it. But it's talking about him every single day is what helps.
And Tony, Shanna is the strongest person I've ever met. This was not just her only child. This was her best friend. She raised Braden on her own every single day. And the relationship they had is something I strive to have with my children. Bray didn't hide things from her because he had to, keep secrets from Mom. He told her the good, the bad, the ugly. They were best friends. So the fact that she can get through this every day, and I know some days are harder than others, and I have to call her 15 times to get her to call me back.
Yeah.
She's just been amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you for being there for her, by the way. May I ask where you guys are at right now within, courts and everything like that?
Yes, we have had 3 continuances because Mr. Greendahl, we've had 3 Zoom appearances. Mr. Greendahl has asked for continuances, and it's been for things like his attorney couldn't get out to Folsom to see him, or he didn't get to see his discovery. It's just,
now he has a paid attorney.
Right, and the last time there was a Zoom, he's currently in he's in what am I trying to say, Tiffany?
Prelim?
He's being held. No, where's he being
held?
held?
He's in the shoe. Yeah, he's in the shoe.
He's being held at Folsom. So he's being isolated, obviously. And then our next date is the 27th. Yeah, like I said, 27th, and we're praying that he enters his plea. We've already have heard that he will probably be entering a self-defense or a not guilty. But the attorney or prosecutor my prosecution is prepared to fight that one. They are surprisingly, they have taken this, the moment that the initial prosecutor, Patrick Foster, this came across his desk, thankfully, we had gotten, because, oh my God, the initial photo that went up when they released this publicly after this murder happened, my son, like an idiot. This is the other thing. My son had decided that back when he was in Arizona with Maverick, Tiffany's husband, he decided that he was going to mess with me, and he was going to shave his self into just like a push broom mustache instead of his standard handsome, goatee and like very clean. So he said to me on the phone, "Mom, I've got this really cool push broom mustache." And I said, "No, you don't. You better get rid of it, or I'm not sending you money for commissary." And he's like, "No, Mom, it's great. Like, and don't worry, nobody's ever going to see it." Well, this is
that's the picture they published.
That's the picture that they published. So I'm reeling from this horrific nightmare, and then that's the picture that goes up. And I swear, Tony, like I thought, my God, my son's sense of humor, he is probably going, "Mom, I'm sorry, but that's funny." Like that picture. And so I was like, "Tiffany, we have to get pictures." And so thankfully Tiffany rallied, gets Chris Thomas, ABC 10, we get some better pictures up, thank God. And so I think that so what was my initial thing? Why did I say this? Because it was super important, Tiffany. Why did I bring this up? It was about the pictures. Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm doing this publicly now.
I have no memory either.
Shoot, Tony, come on.
I just have Shanna. I just have his voice in my ear from the video last night. He's wanting me to say it so bad.
No, don't.
I'm not. It's an inappropriate word, but we were watching videos of him last night.
Oh my God.
But on a serious note, Tony, his case was so severe that the coroner told Shanna not to view him. So she never even got to see him and say goodbye.
Right.
Because the coroner said, "You don't want to see him like this."
Yeah.
All of his wounds were to his face and to his neck.
Right.
Oh.
So it's gruesome for me because now I have to. Oh, I guess now I know where we were at. So I think that when Patrick Foster, now I know, Patrick Foster, the prosecutor, when 2 months in, or 2 months after, like, they finally get this case that comes across their desk, and he said that he read the case, and thankfully, Tiffany, we had gotten the social media up. We'd gotten the Justice for Bray page up. We'd gotten the news media up. I'd done the interview, and they were able to read Bray's story and see, piece it all together and see all of it. And he said that it just hit his heartstrings and did something to him, because it was the final case that he took that made him leave the public sector and go back into private, because he said he couldn't. It was just, Bray's case just did something to him, because he said, because he knows all the details. He saw the autopsy report. He knows things that I don't know yet. And the chief of prison crimes in the DA's office, all he could say to me was, when this is done, you need to go after them. But you have to let your son's case go through the criminals process, but you go after them, because this has happened way too often. They were so disturbed and moved by my son's case. They don't go after, these cases don't see the light of day. So for them to bird dog this and push it through to the point where Patrick's last final action before he left the DA's office for good was to contact me the day before my birthday and Christmas in December 20, I think it was December 23rd, 2021, to tell me that they were going to file formal murder charges against Greendahl. That was incredibly validating to me. If nothing else happened, that meant that they believed in this case and my son. That's huge. So that tells me a lot. So that tells me that it's powerful, and it also tells me how gruesome this murder scene is. Pretty gruesome, and I'm terrified of that. But I have to get through it. So any light you can shine on this, it just helps us.
Have you ever been in contact with another family or mother or father who unfortunately is experiencing the same thing as you?
I have not.
Yeah, man, there's so many out there. Me personally, I have not spoken to anybody out there, but I can only imagine the dozens and dozens of family members who have been affected by prison violence. It's very unfortunate and disturbing.
I'm most disturbed too by, I think, the case, I'm sure you're familiar with it, of the prison guard from CSP Stack who committed suicide
supposedly.
Recently. Right. Because that whole situation, because of information that information he divulged about guards. Wasn't that it?
Yeah, he was pushed out of the prison because he went forward and told the wrongdoings that these other COs were doing. And he lost his job. And him and another CO that had both stood up for the inmates because the treatment they were getting was wrong.
Yeah.
Supposedly committed, both of them.
And there's a huge part of me, and as I told Tiffany before we even talked to you, there's such a huge part of me. Maybe I watched too many documentaries and too many true crime shows, which I do, a sick amount of that I watch, that I don't ever want to do anything before the trial to jeopardize my son's case, because nothing's more important to me than getting this justice. But I also don't believe in being afraid of uncovering injustices and letting people, run rampant with continuing to ruin people's lives at the same time. So I don't want to jeopardize anything to do with his case, but I also don't want to see these things continue at the same time. So I'm cautious about what I'm saying out loud, but I'm also, because I could say so much more, but I can't right now. But once my son's case is resolved, I will sing like a canary if I have to.
Whenever these incidents happen, obviously, there was like 20 something last year. There's already been one, thus far, the second week of January. When these incidents occur, does that kind of take you back to that day that you got that unsettling phone call?
Yes, absolutely. Every single time.
Yes. I think of a mother. I think of what that must feel like. Yes. Every time I hear a siren, every time I hear an emergency vehicle, every time I hear a loud noise, I mean, things like that too. In addition, I feel like I don't know. It's changed me in a way that I don't know how long it will. It's just changed me, and I worry constantly about how much more, like the prisons. I feel like that we're allowing the guards and the prisons to. I feel like there's no order anymore, and I feel like we're sending people. We're sending people in there to just die, and we're not, like, there's no, the punishment system. Like, it scares me. It's like so if somebody, yeah, sure, I believe in there being a system where do the time, the time should, you know what I'm trying to say. I do believe that there should be some form of punishment for doing a crime, but I'm terrified for people to go into jail. I mean, the things that are going on in the main jail, and it scares me. We just don't have a good system right now, and it worries me, and I'm not discouraged, though. I'm not one of those people that feels like it's discouraging to try to promote change, to try to help. I want to help. I don't know. I just think it's broken so badly.
I want to thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day and sharing his story. I wish you guys, so much luck, and I hope that they do convict this guy and ultimately send him, to life. Unfortunately, there's no more death row in the state of California, but I do believe an individual like that who will take someone's life in such a vicious manner. I do believe he should be in prison for the rest of his life.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you so much, Tony, for taking the time to cover this and for giving Braden a voice.
Yeah.
God bless you guys. Thank you for the opportunity.
God bless you. Yes.